A very, very important capability for us as humans is to be able to identify and understand emotions in others. We actually start doing this at a very, very young age, not just so that we can react to them in a social manner, but because even infants will use this to help learn about emotions and to help learn about what are appropriate and inappropriate reactions to and behaviors involving emotions. This is why it's so important to really look at your own behavior when you are around infants, as well as young children. They are really looking to that to determine how they are going to behave. One of the things I want to talk to you about that's really, really interesting, that really shows how infants use this social information to learn how to react to their environment, is something called social referencing. Social referencing really, really starts emerging very, very strongly at about 7 to 10 months of age. In fact, it does start before this, but this is where experimentally we've really been able to show this quite well. There is a study called Campos Visual Cliff. Well, it's actually a series of studies. This has actually been replicated many, many times that really shows you what social referencing is. Because what is it? It's the process by which infants assess how they ought to be feeling or behavior in a variety of uncertain situations. In other words, when we have an infant or a child who encounters a situation where they're not sure how to behave, what do? They look to their parents to see what their reaction should be. Let me give you a quick example before we watch this video. I'm sure many of you have seen where you have a little toddler who's running around who falls down and, well, they're kind of hurt, but they're not really hurt and they're not really sure if they should cry or not. So what do? They look to their parents to see what their reaction is. And if you have the parent who reacts in a strong manner, like, oh my gosh, oh, you poor thing, what do? They cry. On the other hand, when you have parents who, in a situation like this, say, oh, yeah, you're okay, no problem, get up, go play, then you have a very different reaction. And this type of reaction carries over into future behavior. So that's an example of this. But let's go ahead and let's watch this Campos Visual Cliff video. It's only about 2.5 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and include it in our lecture.
Emotion is a nonverbal language.
Is your tummy ticklish?
Emotions reveal the cognition, the understanding of the baby. And furthermore, emotions are the nonverbal communication of the baby towards the parent and the parent towards the baby. Therefore, I thought that emotions were a royal road, one royal road, to the study of the baby's development.
In this study, babies between 9 and 12 months are brought into the lab and placed on a large plexiglass top table. Half of the table has a checkerboard pattern just underneath the surface, but halfway across is a visual cliff, which the baby can tell drops off steeply. The plexiglass top continues, so it's perfectly fine to proceed. But the baby isn't so sure, and this is a big drop for a baby just starting to crawl. She wants to get across to get the toy, but she's cautious and looks to the opposite end of the table where her mother is. The parent is instructed to smile or make a fear face.
If the mother is posing a fear face, the baby typically does not cross this stair-step downward, this modified visual cliff or visual step. On the other hand, if the mother poses a smile or somehow poses a nonverbal communication that is not prohibitive but encouraging, the child is much more likely to cross over to her. This particular study demonstrates the role of nonverbal communication in determining the child's behavior in uncertain contexts. A baby will, when they encounter something ambiguous, something uncertain, will typically look to the significant other, the mother, the father, a grandparent, the caregiver, in order to figure out what to do. So by 11 to 12 months of age, the baby is already doing what all of us do when something unusual happens. We look around to figure out how other people are reacting.
One of the things that's really interesting about social referencing is that even though we tend to talk about it when it comes to children and infants, we actually continue to do this and engage in this type of behavior even as adults. There's a lot of studies out there that have actually looked at when and how we engage in this. We're not going to talk about this in this class, but what we find is that even as adults, when we find ourselves in a situation that has a certain amount of ambiguity or we're not really sure what to do, what we do is we look around us and we see how other people are reacting to this. Really can be quite interesting. So let's continue talking about identifying and understanding others' emotions when it comes to this development in young children. One of the things that you'll find is prior to about 3 years of age, children really are able to understand a lot of these various behavioral emotional cues. But one of the things that they do have difficulty with is in identifying these different emotions verbally. They tend to be pretty inconsistent when it comes to that. There are a lot of experiments and studies in this area, but I want to show you one in particular. It's called the still face experiment, where it really shows how even young infants, even young children, already have an understanding, even if it is a basic understanding, of being able to identify other emotions and how important it is in a social environment.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
as you can see, from a very young age, we really are able to respond to these social and emotional cues. Now, as language develops, children, of course, are better to verbalize their emotions. So at about 3 to 5 years of age, you'll find that children are really pretty good at being able to label their emotions, particularly when it comes to their basic emotions. They first do focus on positive emotions. So you will have young children who first talk about how they are happy and those sorts of things. And then after that is when they will be able to label negative emotions. As time goes on and they get a little bit older, then they can start labeling some of these more complex emotions, but at younger ages they really tend to focus on these more basic emotions.